Today on Off the Hinges, relax, pour yourself a drink, and unwind from your week as I answer your questions and share stories about this week's trade. I'm joined by a special guest, and I have my whiskey in hand. I'm so glad you made it. Are you ready? Let's slide into the vault. I have been waiting for this for a long time, and my friend that's with me today, there's so many connections and touch points that we have. This is a meaningful day, a special day, not just because she's here, but to both of us. And we're diving deep into endurance today. If you see her a little distracted on the other side, she has some fantastic animals. She's a horse mom, a dog mom. She's got not the horses in the house, but the dogs. So, and hey, the German Shepherds. So you got to love them. Let's see what you got going on over there. Who's this?
This is Zero.
Oh, Zero. What up? Welcome to the vault. Maybe you should steal the show.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take a quick sip. Please give a really quick introduction to our friends. Tell them who you are.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me on here. My name is Kessler. I am, as Josh already introduced me, I'm active duty as well. We met when I was enlisted on my first deployment. I had just lost my husband to suicide. He was a sergeant at the time. And I was pretty open about seeking help for mental health and kind of my experience on the other side of suicide. And so we started talking, bonding over our shared experience with that and wanting to get our story out there so that other people didn't feel like they were so alone in experiencing whatever side of it they were experiencing at the time. And just over the years, you guys have kind of become like a big brother and sister to me. You helped me get into my MBA program at UC Davis, which I'm about to graduate. So I've definitely brought you guys up a lot throughout that journey. But so it isn't always sad when we talk. We talk about the happy things, and you guys are a big part of that part of my life too. So it's really cool that we've stayed in contact and getting to see you pursue your dream and helping other people, and then letting me be a part of that too. So I'm hoping to learn from you on that one.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So disclaimer up front, she nailed it. We're both Marines. We're gonna dive deep into some stuff and unpack this for y'all because this is a very relevant topic. I can't think of a better friend to have about this just because of, like she said, the way we met. We'll get into that. But upfront disclaimer, yeah, we're both Marines. Nothing we say is representative of the Department of Defense or the Marine Corps, the typical things I have to say. And also, this is Bree and Josh. It doesn't matter what our ranks are. It doesn't matter if it's the same or not because we're friends. She's a sister. I'm a brother. We are like family. So whatever. It's good. So here we go. Yeah. So last time I think that Laura and I saw you together, I do remember that when you were doing your application, we were in San Clemente, real close to the pier, and it was our little condo that was right there by the beach. And you were on our deck, and we were just going through all of that. And it's just, yeah, that was cool. I think that was the first time we had you over, and you're like, "Hey, I got these questions. Can you help us out?" So we just sat out on the deck and got after it. But yeah, give a little bit of that backdrop. Like, how's it going? I know you're getting ready to graduate, but what's that been like for you?
It's been really interesting. It's a STEM MBA, which I guess I always joke that they let me into the program during COVID because I was a finance tech in the Marine Corps. I think they thought I could do math.
Mhm.
So I've struggled a bit with that, but my interest in that was marketing, hospitality specifically. And my end game is once I retire from the Marine Corps, I want to stand up a ranch. It's going to be multifaceted because I don't want to have to ask people for a lot of money to fund my heart's desire, which is to take retired canines and equine working animals,
Mhm.
reemploy them as therapy animals for first responders and military veterans. And so, to support that, my dream is to have a ranch where we actually host people at our facilities and cabins and have different activities for people to go out and do, both in a therapy program and just for vacation.
Yeah.
And then yeah, there's like little things that's like, and then, and then, and then. So it's just built itself out over the last few years as I've worked on it for some of my projects for school. But that's the dream. And then the house I'm in right now, I actually turned into a midterm rental. We're not allowed to do short-term rentals in California, but I had to turn it into a midterm rental when I got stationed in Texas. And I had a renter that I had to evict because she wasn't paying rent. So I had to be creative to save my home because I really wanted to keep this home. And so I kind of took a little piece of that dream for Rock and K Bar Ranch. Don't take it. I already have it in my heart. Uh, so
Not
I
taking it.
set
It's
up
all you.
Rock and Cave Art Properties to make a smaller version of my dream in the ranch house here, and so that's what I have it marketed as, and then because I'm T80 to Camp Pendleton, I'm staying in it with my dogs and my horse.
Nice. Nice. Where are you at in Cali right now?
Temecula, out in wine
Okay.
country, so
That's what I
I'm
thought.
T80, so I don't know if everybody's military or not, but temporary duty to Camp Pendleton for
Yeah.
as a captain, you have to go through expeditionary warfare school, but I didn't want to do the full resident over on the East Coast, so I did a blended seminar where I came to Camp Pendleton for a month, went back to work for 3 months, and now I'm back here for 6 weeks. So I'll finish that June 6th, and then,
Cool.
like we said, I'll finish my MBA June 13th.
That's awesome. Nice. Okay, we're going to dive into questions. So these first few are sort of the staples of the diet here that I ask everybody. But I'm really excited for your responses because I just know you well and I know your heart well. So I'm really I'm really looking forward to what you have today. So number one, maybe one of the most important ones. What are you thankful for this week?
So I have lived by the motto of everything happens for a reason. I tend to say it when things are going really, really bad or not the way that I want them to.
Mhm.
Um, and I joke that it's probably my way of romanticizing the terrible things that happen in life and getting me through each of those things. So I got surprised with orders on the completely opposite end of the spectrum of what I wanted and where my heart's desire was.
Yeah.
And, I got emotional about it for, like, maybe 24 hours and talking through it. You're one of the people that I talk to as I seek out people who I value their opinion and their advice, and I knew I needed to get my heart right about it because they probably weren't gonna change. And I just kept saying, "Everything happens for a reason." And I kinda got to a point where I was just like, "Okay, God, like, I know there's a reason. There's like whatever it is, I trust you because you've gotten me through all of these really terrible things in the past where I trusted you that it was for a reason, and then you showed me in the long run what it was." And so, as much as I didn't want to be with Marine Corps Recruiting Command anymore, I wanted to be deployable. As much as I don't have any desire to be on the East Coast and I hate the snow, I am on my way to be an officer selection officer in Buffalo, New York this summer, and I'm doing it with a happy heart. So, I'm just grateful that the people that give me a hard time about saying, "Oh, everything happens for a reason," I'm just grateful that I actually have that perspective because I know there's something good that's gonna come out of that, even though it was devastating in the moment to hear that I was going somewhere I didn't wanna go.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I love that. It's there's so many things you can't control in this life, and you know that, especially in the military. And yeah, I mean, your attitude and your response is a choice. So wise choice. And there is always
Exactly.
something to be grateful for. I think in everything, there's a book that says that. In everything, we should give thanks. So I love that.
Yeah.
What have you been learning lately?
Um, to slow down. So part of the reason I didn't want to be in MCRIC anymore was because I am in a different time zone every week with the job that I've had for the last 2 years,
Hmm.
and I love it. But I also realized that part of my healing journey, part of my running so much and being on the go has been kind of avoiding some things. My need to be on the go and working constantly and always on the move was kind of like a trauma response to some things that I hadn't dealt with. So it was my avoidant behavior of just not wanting to settle and process through some things. So my intention was part of the reason I blocked off my house for this trip is to settle, to sit down, sit in my feelings, process things, have a consistent routine, and I guess just like the calmness and stillness of where I would normally get bored, just really sit in that and let that work its way through my
Yeah.
life. So um, I love it. Like the quiet, the calm. I've always, I mean, you've known me for a long time. I've always had something to say and I've always been on the go. So learning to just be quiet and still has been, it's actually been really great.
That is good. I do know you decently well. And yeah, you are full of life and energy, but I will say this in a good way. You do have a good balance and appreciation for creating space and being content. So and we'll dive into that maybe a little bit too. I'll be curious your thoughts on it. Um, but yeah, I just feel like you can. you can have a fast paced life. You can have ambitions and dreams and goals and drive and still appreciate the calm and the still and being contented. And I think those two can live side by side. And I actually see that lived side by side incredibly well in you. So, yeah, I like that you're learning that and focusing on that because you're right. It is really healthy to process through things or just maybe even to have the energy and the stamina to endure when the things start flying crazy and going a little off the hinges, as some might say. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, awesome. Um, I'm going to ask you this next question, and I think it's going to tie in nicely to that one because if you're looking at resting and reflecting as you do that, how are you hoping to grow and transform personally through this season of trying to seek out maybe some more rest and calm?
That is a really good question. For me, I realized that when you're always on the go, you're not giving your full attention to anything enough to give it depth. And I really wanted to sort out the noise between what was a distraction and what deserved more of my focus and just kind of parse out those things that are the most important. So, for me personally, it was learning to say no because I mean, I could have a million things on my plate and somebody calls me and is like, "Hey, can you drive and fix this? Or can you pick me up from the airport? Or can you drop this off? Or can you watch my dog?" Or like whatever it is. And like my house could be on fire and my truck could be on fire. And I'd be like, "Yeah, sure, I'll be right there. I'm so sorry you have to wait for me." And so learning to slow down is also teaching me like, no, thank you for inviting me at the last minute to go to dinner, but I've already had my schedule set and I'm going to be in bed by this time because tomorrow's plans will be ruined if I interject one more thing today.
Right.
And so learning to stay true to that because I easily get distracted off of like what my main goal is
Hmm.
trying to appease everybody else. And so really like it's one thing to know it, but it's another thing to know it to your core and live to that standard. And so like we can preach something all day long and still not live it. I want to live that where I
Right.
have the boundary and I have the dedication to the things that matter.
Mhm. I love that. Fantastic response. Okay, before I ask you this next question, and this one's going to be so good. I'm going to do something. I'm going to read because we're talking about endurance, and I will read the dictionary definition. But what I love about this, just this platform and this forum with good people that I know and trust and value, is like you can read something and you can read a definition, or you can come with a fact. And I even shared this earlier this week. Like a fact can sort of be cheap and easy, and anyone can pull it up, and then it can be easily refuted or opinionated. But a story, man, it's hard to argue with someone's experienced story in life. It's hard for someone to listen to you, which they're about to do, and go like, "Yeah, I don't believe that. I think this." Like that's yours. That's golden. That's priceless. So endurance, by definition, if you look up in Merriam-Webster, it has three sort of subsets of it. Um, it's a noun. So there you go, for those of you that care. And it says the ability to withstand hardship or adversity, especially the ability to sustain a prolonged stressful effort or activity. Okay, there's one definition. The next is the act or an instance of enduring or suffering. Okay. And then the final one is a permanence or a duration. So, like the endurance of a play's importance. So, those are the definitions. And I would say generally, yeah, agree with it. Sure. Dictionary is probably a decent reference point. But you and I specifically landed on this and you started hinting on it a little bit based on our experience. And I'm not going to steal any of Bree's thunder, but I just want to outline like, I don't know if it's ironic. I don't know if it's just this is the way it shook out. Maybe it's some divine intervention. Maybe it's a little bit of God just giving us a wink and a nudge and going like, you're the right people to be talking on this physical day. So another friend of mine had something come up, couldn't make an episode that she was going to be joining us for, which was fine. That happens. Life happens. And I always have a backup plan to the backup plan. Well, this time I was like, ooh, that's sort of a short fuse. So I reached out to Bryanna. I'm like, hey, we've been catching up. I've had you on my mind. Would you be willing to join on my podcast? And I don't think this was just like a yes because she can't say no. She was excited to do it. So she was like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, I have a couple things that I'm thinking as far as like some virtues that I think would apply to you based on our stories and our shared experiences. But I'm going to show you this list that I have, and you pick one. And we pretty quickly both landed on endurance for you because it just resonates deeply with both of us. So this is the 22nd episode of Off the Hinges. And 22 is a very familiar number with military personnel for like 22 vets a day, suicide. You can Google it. So our connection point is people that were very near and dear to us committed suicide. This is the 22nd episode. Right now, physically, time frame, because of course I don't record this live. I'll drop this tomorrow for you. But today is May 15th, which was my dad's birthday. And May 15th also holds a really special meaning to you. So I don't know, just these little nudges, whatever you believe in a higher being, whatever. I choose to believe in God, and that's my faith. But whatever you believe in, I think there's something deeply spiritual about the connections we can have with other people and the stories that we can share and how important that is to actually be able to endure through hardship or adversity, not just alone, but together. So, with that short little framing of what this word is, but then its importance and its beauty to me when I think of it through the lens of you. Um, this next question, you paint this canvas and write this story however you want. What is your story? Buckle up, everybody. This is going to be good.
Okay. So we did choose endurance.
Hmm.
For me, I tell everybody, especially in the military, like I can suffer through anything as long as I know I'm suffering for a purpose. I refuse to suffer for stupidity or no reason at all. And we've all been there. If you've been in the military, you've got like that leader that just made really poor decisions and you're out there in the rain and they're like, there's no reason you should be in the rain. But then there's like that good hard training where like you're stuck in Bridgeport and what was it, an avalanche? Like, and that's training right there. Like
Oof.
you're making it through. And I think that there's a different kind of fortitude that the guy who's complaining about having to stand outside in formation in the rain is going to be also probably be the guy who can save your life in the rain avalanche in Bridgeport. And I think there's a distinct difference. So I'm actually listening to an audiobook right now that is talking about like some people argue that you're born with certain characteristics, and then some people are arguing that those characteristics are molded into you based off of your experiences. And so, of course, as you're listening to this, it's kind of a dry listen. You kind of think through, like, well, what's my personal opinion of it? And I've thought about this a lot, given my experiences, where I'm like, um, am I the way that I am because of what has happened? Or have I approached the things that have happened, like they would have happened anyway? Have I approached them because there's something inside of my heart that I'm meant to be the person who received this? So I think that everybody has a story. Everybody has suffering that they've endured. I hate when people come to me and say, "Hey, you have a story," and I'm like, "We all have a story. Like you have a story. She has a story. Everybody has something sad that has happened to them and molded their life." I think the difference is what you do with your story. And not like, I'm not saying like marketing it, writing a book or anything like that. What I'm saying is, how do you take that thing that happened to you and use it for good or grow from it or learn from it? And so, my thing is that, so Josh already told you guys that we're connected through our shared experience of suicide. But my husband's suicide wasn't the first one I encountered. So in high school, one of my very best friends and I got in a fight over a girl. And he ended up killing himself in front of her over an argument that they had. And that was my first experience where I felt the guilt and the burden of, we were fighting. The last things we said to each other weren't kind. I have to live with that forever. That, he thought that I was mad at him over some girl. Like, of course, I wasn't in the moment, I was, but not lifelong. And so that was my first experience with it. And then a junior Marine, I was a corporal. My husband had just picked up sergeant. Um, and here, like, and that's one thing that I tell people is like, nobody is just happy in their life and they wake up one day and they kill themselves. Like, there's a long string of events and things that have happened over time that the family has experienced, usually in quiet because they're trying to fix it, they're trying to patch it, they're trying not to let the world see how broken the home is. And so there's these things that you endure over time where you're trying to fix your home or your relationship, and then the like the thing happens. And so I was on a TAD trip with all of my guys. We traveled a lot, and my husband was actually supposed to come with me. It was over the 4th of July. and he was too busy because he had come back from deployment and immediately got picked to go on the next deployment. So he was trying to get some stuff ready as the senior guy with the deployment experience before they went and started their first op. So he decided that he didn't have time to come with us over the 4th of July. And it was Cody, Wyoming in 2013. My phone, well, it was like iPhone 2. Like our service just sucked. And I was with my parents. So at that point, we weren't completely attached to our phones all the time. So I would just leave my phone in my hotel room because I didn't have service other than Wi Fi anyway. And I was with my parents.
Right.
So I didn't realize, but like his side of things was that I was away from home in like a big rodeo city where people were partying. I didn't have my phone on me. I must have been doing something nefarious. And so then he started drinking, and that just exasperated his emotions and feelings on things. And so he told some people close to him that I was having an affair, and then he ended his life. And so that was the last thing that a lot of people had heard. And of course, people aren't going to be hesitant to tell you all the worst things about yourself in a moment like that. So I heard all about the terrible things that had been said.
Right.
And immediately it took me back to when I was in high school and I blamed the girlfriend and I said nasty things about this woman. And now I'm in her shoes. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay, God, I heard you. Like, that was a really harsh lesson. But I shouldn't judge somebody based off of a situation that I am not familiar with.
Right.
And that was really evil of me to hold that much hatred in my heart for this woman when I hadn't been in her shoes. And so that was the first lesson that I learned. But then I felt like I was learning all these lessons from a different angle than I had experienced 8 years before.
Mm-hmm.
And so working through like how do I honor my husband's memory and everything that we had gone through and make sure that he didn't die in vain, where people are learning from this lesson, but also knowing that there's people out there that are looking at me like I used to look at this woman, like, how dare you say that you love him when we know what you were doing? Well, you don't know. Like, I wasn't doing that. Um, so just trying to find that balance. And I think that there's just a lot of things that you hold. Like you always think of every fight you had, the worst things that you said, when you didn't answer the phones or when you answered a question coldly. Like you think of every terrible conversation you've ever had with that person and you forget all the loving things that you've ever done. And you're just like, for me, I was like, I am such a bad wife. Like I didn't save him. I didn't force him to go to therapy. I did hide the firearms, but he found his. And so it's like, you just keep going down this rabbit hole. So, and you got to think back. This was me 12 years ago, right? So now we're looking at it hindsight and Monday morning quarterback. We always have the answers in the after fact, but
Yeah.
at the time, my solution was I can't handle all this and I can't face all of this. So what am I going to do? I'm going to drink. And so um, I would function, I would go to work, I would show up for the people that needed me to show up, I would make decisions, I would do all those things, but then at night when I was home alone, well, I have nobody to cook for, like, I've never cooked for one person, so no point in making dinner, I'll just have a bottle of wine,
Mm-hmm.
and, not to get too personal, but he had done it in our bedroom, and so I moved, closer to where I was stationed, but I didn't replace my bed. So I was sleeping on the couch. And I remember it was a Saturday morning and I woke up on the couch hungover and I was just like, what are you doing? Like, you're alive. Do you want to be alive? I do, but I'm not enjoying it right now, and so it's like you have that
Yeah.
whole conversation. And I always tell people like I wasn't suicidal, but I had to have that conversation like, what am I gonna do from here?
Right.
And so I was like, well, dying's not an option, but I'm not living. And so I got up and went for a run and it hurt so bad. And so um
Those hungover
I
runs, the
st-
older you get, aren't fun. No. Let's just be real. Come on.
but it was the first time that I had felt something since it happened. And so that just started on this whole thing of running. And like I'm not a great runner. I don't win a ton of awards, but I thoroughly enjoy going out there and that there's a connection. I was actually trying to find like some of the things I've listened to that talk about the connection between people who have experienced trauma and take up endurance sports. And the one thing that I kept coming across this week was that it's suffering that you can control. And I
Yes.
thought that was really interesting because every long race that I've done, I'm always like, "Man, I should have trained for this," like, "Hey, what was I thinking that I'm just coming out here and doing an ultra marathon or doing the Marine Corps marathon without training? I'm gonna train for this next time." And then you always get like, "Oh, I'm not gonna," there's something about runs that I have to sign up for a race or I'm not getting out of bed on a Saturday. Like, it's
Right.
I'm not waking up early. I'm not gonna run in the cold unless there's something that I'm working towards. But running kind of became my escape. It was how I started working through things in my head. And, I'm not on the phone. I'm not answering people. Like, I'm listening to music or I'm listening to an audiobook or something. And you just get out there and you talk to God and you yell at yourself. There was one time in Arizona in the middle of this mountain. My first trail race I ever signed up for was a 30K. And I'm just like pleading with him to make my heart pop because I did not want to be the one carrying my body the rest of the way down this trail. Like somebody else's problem.
Yep.
Just take me, Jesus. I'm ready.
Yeah. I'm over it. We've
But
had that.
yeah. But I just go back to that whole like endurance to me is suffering for a reason. And I felt like, and maybe somebody will say this is cheesy or it's like, I don't know, I'm full of myself, but I really think that God gives you certain things because you're meant to do something with them. And like I said, I never want there were pieces of my marriage that were broken and there were things that were broken. And there's a lot that I've learned. Like I'm learning not to talk negatively about myself, but was I the best wife that I could have been at 22, 23 years old? No. There are things that I did wrong. There are things that I could learn from that relationship and take forward. But I also know that that whole situation wasn't ideal. And I had to come to the terms of like, I chose to stay. He did not. That wasn't my choice for him. If I had it my way, he'd still be here making me mad, And so, um, that's something that we all have to learn to work through, and I'm really proud of people when they're going through something like this and they realize quickly, "This wasn't my choice," because that is such a huge hurdle to get over. It's like, it doesn't matter if you cussed at them, it doesn't matter if you guys were in the middle of a fight, like, we all have that choice to stay or to go. And as hard as it was, I was going through my own things at the time, my own struggles, and then I took on his, and then there was, like, all these things that you just don't foresee, and I had just turned 25, so I was 25 years old, and I'm taking on these things coming at me, and I was just like, "No, I'm staying." Like, whether it's, out of spite or you guys can hate me all you want or you can judge me all you want, but I'm not going to follow in his trace, and I'm going to take what we're going through now to help other people because I have been that person sobbing on the floor by myself with nobody to call.
Yeah.
And I've been on the other side as the spouse of the person who didn't make a call, but made the decision to not be here anymore. And so I can tell you from both of those experiences what I went through and how beautiful it is on the other side.
Hmm.
And so there are moments, and I'm sure some people get tired of me bringing Steve up all the time, but there's some really beautiful moments, and I'm just like, man, people need to know that when you make that decision, when you're in that moment and you're sad, you're gonna miss beautiful days like this, where all
Right.
the flowers are blooming, or your best friend is graduating, or your nephew's getting married. Like these beautiful days, like maybe sometimes they're far and few in between, but looking back, because it was July, well, our the Marine Corps says July 7th. We know it happened the night of or July 6th. So for me, it's July 6th because that's what my heart knows is the day that he left.
Hmm.
Um, so I think back from July 6th, 2013, all of these things that have happened, not just in my life, but in the people who love him and his family's life, like in his friends from back home, all of the babies that have been born, the marriages, the holidays, everything that he's missed. And to be honest with you, the days that have been hard for me since then, I look back and see what he's missed already, and that's what keeps me going, and that's what
Yeah,
makes me want to tell other people it's worth going suffering for a short time and whatever it is you're suffering through, because there's something on the other side that's worth it.
man. First of all, ugh, that I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot to share. And I know it's not a new thing for you to share that, but sincerely thank you for just sharing that with people that you don't even know that will listen to this. Cause first of all, it speaks to my heart a lot every time I hear it from you. And it's not the first time we've talked about these things. And I'll be real for a second. Like there have been moments where Brie and I have called each other and talked to each other and just wept on the phone to each other, or things have been like really shaking us up emotionally. And I love that about you. Laura and I love you dearly, just as like a sister, and a really close friend. But that's really special to have someone that you've been through some adversity, and it might not be the same exact story, but when you can recognize that, okay, this person has endured through some hardship. And I do love that connection you made between some physical training that you can control, which builds a little bit of this grit inside of you. And it's such a deeply spiritual thing what you just shared with us, and it hits to the spirit and the soul and really deep inside of the heart. But there are some things where you just feel in those moments, I think, where like, man, I have no control over this. Maybe you feel like you have no control over your own life and it feels miserable. But you highlighting how endurance is really only meaningful when you have a purpose to endure for. And then the suffering, even though it might seem insurmountable, it becomes a little bit more bearable when you actually have honed in on your purpose. And then you have a reason to endure. Because I do believe that. And this is the way Brie and I both choose to believe. But it's a biblical reference, but it's actually really good wisdom that the good old Apostle Paul, who I've talked about a lot, and he says, suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And man, I tell you what, there's a lot of people that could use a little bit of hope in this world. And it's not saying that hope only comes through that, working that backwards upstream and saying, like, well, hope only comes through suffering. But it's just saying, like, if you're going to suffer, well, if you can suffer well with a purpose, it will give you endurance. And that endurance, when you stick with it, it is going to forge good character in you. And that character is what yields hope. And there's not a time step on how long that takes. For me, it's a constant evolution and transformation process for me. And it's a constant struggle. But I've seen that with you as long as we've known each other. Like, I wouldn't say it's any less fresh now than it was for us when we met 10 plus years ago. There's days where it's just as raw and just as real for me. And I'm sure it probably does for you. But I think through that time and that maturity and talking through it in forums like this and being able to call each other up and just like have a good cry over stuff that's really hitting deep, those moments are special. But I think that not knowing at the end of how long the suffering is going to last, and maybe it's a lifelong suffering in some way, shape, or form, but that endurance creates hope. And what I love about this, before we move on to the next couple of questions, what I just want to honor about you and your story is the hope that it creates isn't, I really believe it's not saying that it's just a hope for you. I believe that it actually creates a character and a hope for everyone that you come into contact with. And that's been my experience. The hope and the character that you've helped shore up inside of me has been fantastic. And it's something that I really honor about you and I cherish about our friendship. But I've seen that with you and other people too, because we were deployed together and I just watched your spirit and your demeanor with everyone that you were around. And I still see it to this day. And it's really incredible how when you hear a story about someone as young as we are and as young as you are, a widow to a husband who is another fellow Marine NCO who committed suicide. And here you are on the other side of that situation and circumstance, still continuing to press on, still continuing to be honest and raw with your story. And the desire for you is that you can offer hope to other people and that you can continue to heal from that situation. So, man, I really admire you and respect you and deeply love you for what you just shared because I know it's not an easy thing to revisit. And I'm really honored that you shared that with us. So I just wanted to take a quick pause and say thank you. because that's a big deal.
Thank you. Yeah, when
It
I
re-
saw the "What's your story?" I was like, "Oh gosh," like, as many years as I've been told I have one, I'm like, "I don't even know where to start."
yeah. Well, I mean, I love that you just answered it however you wanted to, and that was fantastic. Okay, we've got into this a little bit, so you might have already touched on some of this, but if someone was going to ask you to define or frame this actual virtue of endurance, like how would you cage that up for someone? How would you describe it?
I think I already did touch on it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's the ability to suffer knowing that there's a bigger purpose on the other end.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't wanna go back to it, but these orders that I just got they're 2 years, and people are like, "Oh, how do you feel about that?" And I'm like, "It's only 2 years, like, I can survive anything for 2 years." And so, um, I think just knowing that what you're going to achieve on the other end of that thing makes it worth it, and that's where the endurance comes from, and for a long time, it's silly, but, like, I'll sign up and pay all this money because I just want a little piece of metal on a ribbon at the end of my run,
Yeah.
and a cold beer, and,
Yeah, the cold beer's a really good one too. Yeah.
yeah. And the picture that I can put on Instagram to brag to everybody that I'm fast for my age,
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
but I think of some of my favorite runs or the ones that stick out in my mind or races more than runs. The one in Arizona, that was my first trail run. I still had not run a marathon yet because I was waiting. I was very adamant. I'm very superstitious about some things. So I was very adamant that I would not run a marathon until I did the Marine Corps marathon because hoorah. And so my plan was to do it while I was at
Because
TBS.
hoorah. That is
Yeah.
well
So
done. Good job.
my plan was to do it, while I was at TBS later that year, so this was, like, right before I went to TBS, the basic school in Quantico.
Hmm.
And, so I went to Arizona to visit family, and I signed up for the 30K, which is over a half, but less than a full marathon, and it was this trail run, which I was, like, so full of myself because 'cause I'd been training in Camp Pendleton and getting ready for TBS, and that hill just, like, sucked my soul, and this is when I first started listening to audiobooks, so I think I had already made it through, David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me, and, not this is not at all like me getting political, but I started listening to this is politics were kind of a big thing,
Hmm.
and I'm a political science major, so I started listening to the books of people, whether or not I agreed with them politically, I wanted to understand them better personally, so I started listening to autobiographies, and, it was Joe Biden's Promise Me Dad, where he talked about his son, Beau,
Hmm.
battling cancer and dying. So, I was really jealous of Bo when I was on the, the side of this hill because I was like, God, I'm Jesus, take the wheel. Like I am ready to go. Like, just make this suffering end.
Right.
But I just remember listening to that audiobook and I was like, this is not motivating at all. Like this was a wrong audiobook for this run. Um, but kept seeing all these people because I had always been like a road runner, right? And so there's a drastic difference between road runners and trail runners, and I learned this that day in Arizona.
It's a whole new
Um,
vibe. That's a whole different
oh,
clique of people, man. Mm.
it totally is.
Yep.
But they got me because they had fireball shots at one of the aid stations, and I was sold after that.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, just I think that's where it really clicked with me of like the whole I'm doing this for a reason and there's a finish line in sight and I cannot wait to get to that finish line because God's clearly not picking up my phone calls about just letting my heart pop right here. So I'm gonna have to finish this thing.
Yep.
And it was disheartening as you would see all these people like frustrated, like passing me on the goat trails and like disgruntled that I was in their way. And I'm like, man, like I didn't realize I was this out of shape and unprepared. And just knowing that at the end I get this cold beer, not these 2 dogs that I have now, but I had 2 other German Shepherds at the time, and so they were waiting for me in the truck, so that made me keep going because I didn't want them to wait too long, and, just that was when it became clear, it was like, "You started the race with an end in mind, you can't quit in the middle of it, you've gotta push through this," and it clicked something in me, and I think that was a defining moment for me is that stupid
Hmm.
hillside in Arizona.
Yep. Yeah, and it's with endurance. So I like the way you frame it, but it's interesting. Like, as I've reflected on this and been thinking about it as well. I think a real test of endurance, like physical training is great. And I think it's good to push your mind, your body, and your spirit uh, to different levels to be uncomfortable. You can definitely train endurance training, of course, physically. Yes, it's in the name. But I think it takes on a whole new form for me when there's some sort of pain or suffering or hardship that, first of all, you sort of touched on it a little bit earlier, is that you can't control. So when you lose control, nobody likes that. Nobody. So when you actually can't control it, because like a physical activity, you sort of control, okay, I know the route, I know the distance, or I'm going to go train for this long. It's endurance training, but I can do my meal prep and I'm going to go out for a couple hours for a long, hard run. Great. But I know there's an end. But the reality of life is that suffering, you can't see into the future. So you don't know how long it's going to last. And some of the hardest stuff that we've gone through and that people go through, I think that's the hard thing to balance is some things that we like to train ourselves for in suffering, which are good, and to push yourself and to try and build that muscle of endurance. It's healthy. Don't stop those things. But like, let's be real for a second. We don't know when this actual suffering that maybe we're going through, like where's the other side of the tunnel, God? Or like where's the light? I can't, it's pitch black in here and I don't know which way is which. And I'm just completely lost. I have no control and I don't even know where to go. And that's how it can feel. And I think that's very difficult to navigate through, honestly, regardless of our exposure or experience with suffering before. It's almost like we forget that we've made it out the other side of hard stuff because every time it hits, it's almost like it's brand new at times.
Yeah.
And I think the repetition maybe helps us with learning that, okay, we can trust that we've made it this far. And, as long as we're still sealing oxygen and vertical, that's a good thing. Maybe we'll
Yeah.
still be okay. But I think that is the challenging thing, just to be real with people for a second, is that real suffering, like real hard stuff in life, you don't always know when the end of that race is. And you don't always feel well prepared and you don't always have all the energy. But like you did that one time, you're like, I woke up on my couch and I was like, well, I'm not dead, but I'm not really living. So if you really want to live and pursue something and be purposeful, um, that's sort of a challenge to me at times. Like even to this day, like, man, I wish I knew the end of this thing. But I think the character that's developed in that space is incredible. And a word that resonates to me, this isn't really a question anybody asked, but the thing that just keeps standing out, and it's really based on how you started when you said you've been learning to just calm down and be patient and be steady and sort of sit with things and rest a little bit. And I feel like that is something that our society and that people in general really struggle with is slowing down, sitting in a space, creating a space, even taking, let's say, an hour or an hour plus like this and sitting down with a friend, having a focus talk on something that matters. That's why I love this forum because, man, even if no one ever listened, I get time with you and it's blocked off and it's on my calendar and it's appreciated and respected by my whole family. And I get to just like chop up something that's meaningful for as long as we want. And I can just sit here and I think there's such a lost art in humanity today of just slowing down, calming down, being patient, sitting in a moment. And we're so fast that we want to rush through everything. And when it comes to suffering, you can't speed up that time clock. And I think it helps us and it's healthy for us to learn from what you are learning, to just be comfortable with chilling out a little bit, be comfortable with slowing down. Because in that slowness and in that stillness, I think there's some clarity, even if it's painful. And that's just some things that I feel like I've learned. So I want to kick it over to you and hear your thoughts on that. But I feel like patience and endurance are really tightly intertwined.
They are. And like we get told in the military all the time to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And when you look at society today, it's quite the opposite. People are avoiding their feelings, they're avoiding hard conversations, they're avoiding the hard work. Um, to go out and do, like, I was at jujitsu this morning. That's another thing I'm being more intentional with is going to jujitsu at the 6 o'clock class, which I love. I've been away from this gym for 2 years and it's just like coming back to my family. And
Is Corey Foster going to claim that he got you into that, or is that on
he
your own accord?
did.
I'll
He
bet.
totally in Bridgeport.
We love you, Corey.
I
Wow,
love
man.
Corey. He's another big brother. Actually, yeah, Corey was talking to me in Bridgeport when we were in the COC freezing. He was talking about how jujitsu had changed his life, and I always knew I was going to love jujitsu. I just hadn't really like made space for it. And as we all know, anybody that knows me before I was diagnosed knows I'm ADHD. Like top of the tier on that one. But it, I always knew I wanted to try it, that and Muay Thai. So I got into Muay Thai and Jiu Jitsu at the same time when I was at Regiment and
Hmm.
loved both of them for different reasons. But what I loved about Jiu Jitsu is that was the only time, I mean, I've been riding horses my whole life, but I would still ride my horse and think about all these other things. And so I was never fully engaged with my horse until I went to Jiu Jitsu. And sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole, but went to Jiu Jitsu
Run
and
down
it's
all of
the
them. It's all good.
it's, the only time in my life my brain has shut everything else off around me, and it's just like, "Okay, what is this technique? Like, how do I save myself from this?" Like and it's your friend, like, they're not gonna hurt you, but you're learning, like, how to save your own life, you know? And so it's the only time in my life, even after being diagnosed with ADHD, that my brain has ever just focused on one thing and stayed on track for
Right.
the whole hour that I'm there. And so I love it. Like it's mentally it's good for you, physically it's great for you, and just the people that become your family. And so going back to the original because I do go down tangents, but I always remember why we got there. My friend Christina and I were sitting there talking today, and she was like, it's crazy to me how many jujitsu gyms there are because I don't feel like it's a big community. And I was like, I feel like it is, but then again, my community is the military, so we're more like we tend to do martial arts more than I guess your average person. But I was like, I feel like I know a lot of people that do jujitsu or practice or whatever you want to call it. At different gyms, and granted, like, there's whether you're gi or no gi, like, I always make fun of the 10th Planet no gi guys, but, I'm learning I'm learning to appreciate no gi nowadays, but, just that mindset of people who choose to go suffer with brothers and train together to better themselves and each other, it's I think it's amazing. It's great. I think everybody needs to do jujitsu,
Yeah.
whether you're old, young, broken,
Just
whatever.
try it. Just try
Yeah.
it. It's humbling to have someone just completely dominate you regardless of your fitness or strength abilities. It's a new skill and it is a skill you have to learn on its own. And it just really breaks you down. And I think that struggle is very applicable to a lot of things, but it teaches a lot of self-control, a lot of discipline, and a whole lot of humility. All of those things in spades. Oh my goodness. Good Lord. But I'm going to circle back to something you said because I know you shared some of your story, but you hit on something that I think it'd be cool for you to unpack a little bit because you are not a bragging type of individual, but I do know some of the things you've done in the Marine Corps, which are super dope. Like they're so cool. And you mentioned horses, the equine therapy, equestrian stuff. So Bree's done some pretty cool things for the Marine Corps, especially related to horses. So can you share a little bit of that story? Because that's just fascinating to me. And that's a really cool highlight of who I know you to be and sort of what brings you, I think, to your passion of what you want to do in the future as well with horse therapy and all of that stuff. So I'm going
Yeah,
to
so
ask
I
you
need to talk
to
about
jump in.
Chuck.
Yeah, you totally get to talk about that. So click off safe, have fun with it. But yeah, give people a little sneak peek into that side of you as well if you could.
Okay, well, how much time you got? Because I can go
As long as you want, my
from
friend. It's all
the
you.
beginning.
Do it. Let's
Uh,
start at the start.
so yeah, as much as I am very talkative, I'm also very introverted. And when I got stationed at Camp Pendleton, I joined the Marine Corps later in life. When I got stationed at Camp Pendleton at 22, I was living in the barracks, and everybody would just like drink and party, and it wasn't really a life I wanted to be around, especially being that I was over 21 and most of them weren't. So it was the first time that I had ever moved away from my hometown. It was a really small town, and so I found out that there was a stables on Camp Pendleton. I was, is it loud?
You're good.
Okay. So I was stationed on what we call Old Main Side, and there was a stables just down the road. So I started going down there asking if I could volunteer. I was like, I'll clean stalls, whatever you want. Like, this is just my connection to home. Is I've been around horses my whole life. This is my happy place. And so I ended up finding a couple. the wife had a horse, she was pregnant, and the husband was a sergeant at the time. And so they were like elated to find somebody that wanted to take care of their horse. And I was excited that somebody had a horse that needed to be taken care of. So it was just a perfect match. And I'm actually still in touch with Morgan to this day after she shared Axel with me, who has since passed on. But so yeah, my sergeant was like, "Hey, you're kind of antisocial. Nobody ever sees you at the barracks. Like, what do you do after work every day?" And I'm like, "Well, because I was a good Marine at the time, I was the little red books at
She's
MCIs.
still a good Marine. You're still a good Marine.
I would go do my MCIs in my barracks room, and then I would go to the
Yeah, you
stables
would.
take care of my horse." And so he showed me the Mounted Color Guard, which is a ceremonial unit. There's only one left in the Marine Corps up in Barstow. And I was like, I have to do that. I want to do that. Like, that is right up my alley. I get to talk about the Marine Corps. I get to wear the dress blues, which everybody loves. Sorry, Zero wants to play right now. And I get to be around
Don't
horses.
apologize. But look at this up here. That's, I mean, she's dead now, but like, don't apologize for German Shepherd ever.
They're the best.
That's right.
Um, but so yeah, I was like, okay, I want to do that. At the time, I was slated to go to Afghanistan, and then my husband got put on the same deployment that I was on. He got promoted, so I got moved sections, and then I got removed from the deployment. And this goes back to everything happens for a reason. At the time, I was devastated. I was mad. You can just imagine. I volunteered so many times to deploy, and I didn't get to. I got yanked from every opportunity, but everything happens for a reason. So I ended up going to the Mounted Color Guard while Steve was getting ready to go to Afghanistan. Or I went right after he left. So I got up there, and like I said before, like, a happy person doesn't just wake up one day and decide that they're going to kill themselves. So we had issues.
Mm-hmm.
There were like trust issues. So with him being deployed, he was worried about what I was doing at home, and rightfully so. We have heard the worst stories of what happens when people are deployed. So I tried to be respectful of where his mind would go because we couldn't FaceTime or call like we could now. So
Right.
I spent all my time with Cho. Cho was this short, bad attitude, slow moving horse that nobody liked because of all those reasons. And here I had always ever wanted like the fastest, tallest horse. My grandmother was a 3-day eventer, so I grew up in that life, with the big horses. And here I get assigned like the shortest horse. It's the only horse because I can't jump. I have no vertical whatsoever. It's the only horse I've ever been able to jump on bareback because he was so short. Um,
That's impressive.
and so everybody would go to the bar, and because I didn't want to get in trouble or cause problems with my marriage, and my husband was stuck in Sangin at the time, and I knew that I was stressful because I had a friend that had just come back from a deployment to Sangin. So I'd go hang out with Cho,
Mm.
and I would tell Cho all my problems, everything, and he would be like, "Cool, can I have an apple?" So, but I knew he wasn't going to tell anybody else, and so I ended up, and it's more people expect the girl and the horse to bond. But as I was there, for a long time, that was a tour where infantry Marines were sent as a cool down tour between rotations to Iraq and Afghanistan. That's when you guys were going out on pumps left and right. So a guy would do 2 or 3 pumps, and then they would cycle him to Barstow where he would hang out with the Mounted Color Guard for a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a lot of really seasoned sergeants and a gunny. I mean, these guys were stacked, and they were making fun of my 2 little ribbons when I checked in. And I watched them, guys who had never been on horses, guys who had never been around horses. I watched how they interacted with their horses and how all of a sudden I wasn't the only one that was sneaking away to go ride my horse by myself. And I'd walk in the barn and they'd be listening to music, hanging out with their horse, mucking stalls. And I was like, wow, we all have something in common. And like, I've never seen the things that they've seen, but I've seen the after effects of what they've seen when people come home.
Right.
And I have a very tumultuous home life where their home life is probably more steady, but they had a more tumultuous deployment life. And so getting to see how they interacted and how they opened up to these horses, I was like, there's something here. And it's not just because I'm a girl that likes horses. I think there's a connection being made. And so I was still with the Mounted Color Guard. Obviously, I was CUD with them when I got notified. We were coming back from Cody, Wyoming, and they were actually texting me the whole time asking when we were going to pull back into the stables so that they could notify me. But this is like how I guess romanticized I look at life is like I was kind of, even though I was the youngest and the most junior, I was a corporal at the time. I was kind of like the mama bear. I always try to take care of everybody. And so I was like, great, something bad happened. And it's probably one of you guys that's going to get bad news. That's why they were calling me to see when we were going to be back. And so we parked the trailers and they're like, hey, Corporal Kessler, like, you need to come to the office. And I was like, oh, great. They're going to tell me like the bad news before they notify the other guy so I can help comfort him. And so they had to actually tell me multiple times that I was the one getting the bad news. Um, but then, that whole suffering part is there were days that the only reason I wanted to get out of bed or needed to get out of bed was to go take care of not only Cho, my horse on the Mountain Color Guard, but I had acquired two horses being stationed in bars, so there's not a whole lot to do. So um, my horses were the reason I got out of bed. It's like somebody has to feed them and water them and clean their stall and give them they didn't ask for this. And so
Right.
I was in college then too. And I remember I would wait until everybody would leave. I had a thing about not wanting to go home because I would be alone. So I would stay at the office and I'd wait for everybody to leave for the day. And I'd go grab Cho and then I'd turn on the TV in our office and he would sit in the office with me while I did my homework. And so, I promised him, which I know people are like, "Well, that's dumb. An animal can't understand what you're saying." I'm like, "I understood, and I made the promise." So I promised him that I would adopt him when he retired. I deployed with you from 14 to 15, and then I came back and got selected for MESEP to go to college full time. And I left in January 2016 to go to school down in San Diego. So every year, at least once a year, every year, I would resubmit my application. Yes, I still want him. Yes, I'll still provide for him. And I had made it all the way through college, made it through TBS, gotten assigned to First Marine Division down in Camp Pendleton as a second lieutenant. And in September of 2020, I finally got the phone call that they were going to retire him.
That's awesome.
And they set the date. We were talking earlier before we started that we dates are a big thing for us. They set the date and they actually picked Steve's birthday as Cho's retirement date.
That's cool.
So I drove up and picked Cho up. So he had a lot of health problems by the time I got him. He was 20, oh gosh, what was he, 22 or 23 by the time I got him. And so, but I promised him, like, you're going to have the best retirement ever. And I called him his Air Jordans. He had these special gel shoes that we would have to put on him every like 4 weeks. They cost more than I'm sure a pair of Air Jordans, but because of everything he had done for me, I felt like I owed that to him. So I finally got to give him his retirement. But then I was getting ready to deploy again, and I needed to put him somewhere that I knew that he would be taken care of while I was gone because I didn't know like how long we would have with him. And that's when I was doing the trips to Bridgeport and going to 29 Palms and stuff like that. So I took him back over to San Juan Capistrano to an organization called Otra Moss. So I donated him, but they knew I had a really hard time signing him over. So I never actually signed him over. I don't know if I should say that because I was supposed to have given him to them so that he was covered under their insurance. But they took really good care of him. And then because he had been in the military, they used him as a therapy force with not only veterans but kids whose parents were in the service where they felt that connection, and it just solidified the theory that I always had that guys, because I am really, I mean, I'm big on mental health all the way around, but I have a heart for men because I feel like you guys get told to suck it up a lot more and you get alienated a lot more, and especially when you leave the service, men lose that sense of camaraderie and team. And so my emotional investment is in men, and so I wanted to make that connection where I think men are more susceptible to bond to an animal that they know has also served. So that's where my desire to run a therapy program that reemploys retired canines and equines out of service to do therapy with first responders and service members comes from. And then
That's so cool.
it was really cool. What's really cool is we had to put show down in January of 23.
Hmm.
And actually, this Friday, I am giving a speech for a luncheon raising funds for Otra Moss, and I get to talk about Cho. one more time. Well, I mean, I will always talk about show, um, but I get to talk about that and further advance, hopefully, Otramas's mission. And I absolutely love after Cho passed away, I got some letters from some people who had done therapy with him about how much he meant to them. And so just knowing that I got to share the joy and love of Cho with other people and that he got to impact other people's lives is pretty great. And then they took a picture of the day that I adopted him and made him us the military poster for Otramas. And so Cho gets to change lives even today.
That's awesome. I love it. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, this next question is totally unrelated to endurance. Maybe the fact that we had to endure someone sending in this question. but, but you know what? You send them in and we honor it. So we're going to ask this. And then you just need to like put your mouth guard in and get ready for a fight, whoever you are, random mystery question dropper person. Because like pump your brakes. First of all, Bree and I both went to this place that you're questioning. We both were prior enlisted staff non-commissioned officers before we became officers. So like we rolled deep, we rolled tight. So like yeah,
And we both do jujitsu, so you better watch out.
for a lot of reasons. For a lot of reasons. Well, let's you know what we're gonna ask a question because I asked a question. So I'm gonna let you answer this one because I got my own thoughts. Why? It's a presumptuous question. Good Lord. Why is Marine Corps Recruit Depot San Diego better than Paris Island? It's our inside joke. I don't even know who you are, and I sort of don't like you. I'm going to be honest, but Bree, please answer this
Yeah.
person.
Well, that's a trick question because it's not.
Fake
It's the
news.
backup boot camp.
Not. It is not
Yeah.
a real question.
The
Great
only
answer.
thing, I mean, I guess from a recruit perspective, it's a lot better because the weather is really nice and you get to go to baseball games, which we don't get at the real boot camp.
That
You know,
sounds
where
real
Chester
nice.
and
That
John
sounds like
Bass.
yeah, right. Yeah, that sounds yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very good response, Bree. You're full of wisdom. I see. Yeah. Hey, actually, thanks for sending in the question. I'm sorry. I should calm down. I'm gonna let me be a
We
nice
appreciate the engagement.
let me be a nice host. But you started it, whoever you are, you started it, and I don't like that. Paris Island. You know what? It runs deep in our blood. Got a lot of sand flea bites, a lot of things that happen down there. But yeah, I can hear that. I've heard the arguments for over 23 years now. Which one's better? I don't know. If you're a Marine, rock and roll. We love you. We're proud of you. Paris Island's better. End of story. Okay. Next question. That was a great answer, by the way. Good job. You handled that like a champ. Um, what is something sacred in your personal life that is separate from your professional life? That's a good question. Do you have anything?
That is a really good question because it really made me think that I am not good at separating my personal and professional lives at all.
Hmm.
I would say what's sacred for me is my family, but they also are very entwined in my professional life.
Yeah.
So, I guess not everybody is as close to their grandparents as I always have been. So, my mom's mom helped raise me, and so she was my like the nanny or daycare, if you will. So I spent a lot of time with my grandma Pat growing up. Her and I are very close. Um, Same thing with my dad's real mom. When he would have custody of me because my parents were divorced when I was young, I always make the joke you can't be a Marine unless you have parent issues. Uh, but um, my grandma Doreen and I were very close, and she actually, after my husband died, she actually lived with me off and on for several years. So this house that I'm in, I actually bought because I was in college and had horses and dogs. Stop it. And grandma didn't like being in because it was a two-story house and all the bedrooms were upstairs. So grandma didn't like being at the house in two stories by herself because she was afraid of the stairs. So I scrapped together my savings and bought this little farmhouse out on property in the middle of nowhere that nobody wanted to be in Temecula at the time. And ended up just getting this little one level house that accommodated everything. And I love it out here. It's my place of peace. But then I also have my bonus grandmas. So my on my dad's side, his real dad remarried or got married after several years of being a wild drunken sailor. Um Settled down with Grandma Marie, and Grandma Marie never had her own kids. So when I came into the picture, I was in third grade when I met my real grandfather and Marie. and instantly bonded with them. He was the reason I wanted to be in the military. I wanted to be just like my grandpa.
Mhm.
And I love fighting too. So I guess apple didn't fall far.
Yeah.
My grandpa boxed in the Navy.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, Grandma Marie had horses. So they gave me my first pony, gave me my first horse. Grandma was the one that got me started riding. And her and I to this day, like I'll call her. Like, she didn't like that I started riding Western, or especially hated it when I barrel raced. But to this day, I can call her and I say, like, my horse is giving me fit going around this or going over that. And so she'll walk me through it. And so I would say my relationship with my grandmas specifically, I've been very close with them my whole life. And
Mhm.
that's something that I cherish. But especially Grandma Doreen with her living down here with me, all of the Marines knew her as Grandma. So it's not like my family isn't very separate because my mom always wanted a bunch of kids. So she loves having the Marines around. And
Yeah.
uh, yeah, that's not very separate at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a good question. I think I'll answer this one as well because I don't know. That's a well phrased question, and I love the friend that asked it, and it's very intentional. And she's also very good with words. So I know that each word that's placed there is intentional. But what is sacred in my personal life? First of all, I'm just going to take that everything on the left side of the comma. It says, "What is something sacred in your personal life, comma, that is separate from your professional life?" So let's just take the front part of that. Something sacred in my personal life, I would say all of it. I mean, on genuinely all of my life, I've view it personally. I view my life, whether you want to call it personal, professional, I don't find a difference. It's my life that I've been gifted, and the things that I do with it is a choice. But the life was a gift, and I find that fact to be the way I choose to believe a very sacred gift. Um, so the relationships, the interactions, and that's what sort of strikes a chord in me. And there's things I could do as well, but it starts relationally with people first. Um, it is all sacred, and I'd say there's a lot of sacred substance to my professional life as well because it's people, and the heart of people is in the image of the invisible, and that's to me that's very sacred. So like people are people, and that can be bad, but that can also be like a really beautiful thing. So I just something sacred in my personal life and probably also in my professional life is the relationships and the opportunity to do life with others, because by myself it would be really boring. um but is there something that I separate from professional life? uh Maybe not in the sense that some people would think. I don't try to keep it separate, like, oh, I don't let these two worlds interfere or influence each other because I just don't find that to be natural for me. I find it clunky and awkward. I try to be the same me in each space. But of course, as a husband and a father, there are a lot of things that are just very cherished and very secluded to just like me and my girls, my four girls, my wife and my daughters. Like that's precious. That's special. My breakfast with them, my time with them, reading to them, tucking them in, the little things we share together. Of course, that's just between a dad and his daughter. The time with my wife is, husband and wife, as it should be. But I will say that Laura and I are very intentional to let our family life and our love that we have together, we try to let that flow out into our friendships and our relationships in our community. And we try to share that with others. So I don't try to border it up and isolate it. Um, because I actually think that isolation is really harmful, not just for us, but for people around us. And as it relates to this topic and virtue of endurance, isolation is such an arch rival of being able to endure because no one is meant to go it alone. You're not. Even if it feels like you're all alone, I think those relationships in the sacred aspect of them is what can give hope when you're suffering, is to know that part of that purpose might be those deep relationships that you have, even if they feel broken or disconnected. But yeah, professionally, I think something that I do to try and maybe protect my family from feeling like they're getting invaded by a Marine that's been doing this for a long time. I don't wear my uniform home. I don't wear it to work or home from work personally. There might be a very rare occasion where I have to, but like most of the time, I leave my uniform at work and I go either in my gym clothes or regular clothes, and then I leave. And I've done that as long as I've even been an officer. Like I just It's a decision to where my little girls will see dad, not, rank and last name. Right. So there are certain things that I try to do to separate to where I honor and value and uplift the family first over trying to idolize an occupation, which could go away in a heartbeat. So I try to make the most important thing the most important thing. But I'm okay if they know what I do. And I think, it's healthy to give a balance there. So work life balance, I don't know. For me, I don't know how you view that term or that dichotomy, but to me there is no, I don't try to view it as a work life balance. It's just life. I just do life. And I naturally have to show up a little differently in different spaces based on the purpose or the task or the mission or what I'm doing. But like, I just try to be Josh, and then I try to honor my wife first and foremost above everyone, and then my little girls because they came as the offspring of me and my wife, and then after that, all others. So there is a pecking order. I am a believer first, and then a husband next, and then a father next, and then after that, I'll be a friend. So that's an intentional sequence, and I think all of those spaces are really sacred to me. So that's the world in the eyes of Josh, I guess, in response to that question. But that's a good, tough question. Thanks for that. Yeah.
It is. That was a really
Yeah.
good question. I think
I know.
that you say work-life balance. I think that looks like something different for a lot of people.
Hmm.
And so for me, I try to having junior Marines and having not had much of a home life or a personal life as a junior Marine that used to bother me. I try to not bother them when they're off work. I mean, it's gonna bleed. Like there's gonna be times, but I want them to know that if I'm bugging them or I'm taking away their personal time or their weekends, it's for a reason. It's not just because I'm bored or I'm too lazy or like I won't stick up for them. Um, but a work-life balance, I think for me is being true to who I am. Like you said, being who you are genuinely in that space, no matter what uniform or clothing you have on, I think kind of blurs that work-life balance where it's like, I genuinely want to be sorry, there's one tennis ball and two
Yeah.
germs over.
Don't apologize
Um,
for zero. I love it.
um, but I genuinely want to be the best breed that I can in every facet of my life. So
Hmm.
I want to show up for Marines when they need me. I want to show up for my friends when they need me. And to be the best version of myself, I think, is to be that person in all those spaces so that they consistently know who they're getting. So it's like, what is that balance? Because if you're really passionate about what you're doing in life and you're trying to make a difference in the world, I think that blurs really fast. And it's, I guess, like a balance of your energy and being more intentional of what you feed into.
Yeah. I love that though. That's a really good way to respond to it because I think if you want to look at like the intra personal or like me in relationship to myself, it's all just a part of my life. But it is from a leadership perspective, you are spot on. Like an interpersonal leadership mindset or dealing with colleagues or junior Marines or even senior Marines, like I think it is our job to honor their time and almost make it sacred to them, like when they are not at work and not disrupt or inject or come carpet bombing in to like steal their time away and be a time bandit. Like just let them have their space, let things breathe. You know what? You have a duty officer and a duty NCO for a reason. Maybe you don't have to blow everybody up on the weekend because back in the day, when this guy did it quite a few years ago, we didn't have cell phones all the time to call on the weekends and blow people up. That's what the duty was for. Just a quick example for my Marines, which they can resonate with. Right. So, like some things, when you're constantly swooping in and stealing their free time and their spare time, you aren't you aren't honoring them. You aren't being a good example or setting that example. So I think for me, with myself, it's a part of my life. So I love all of it. But I do honor my family first. But I think as a leader, that's a different perspective. An emotionally intelligent leader goes like, man, I'm not going to sideswipe this, young Marines or maybe grown Marines time. Like I'm gonna border that and protect it for them because that's my job. And I'm gonna do my best to fight for them to where other people don't disrupt that also because they need a chance to do what Bree's trying to do, to rest, to replenish, to just take some time for themselves to grow and learn and just be them. So I do love that you took that perspective as well because it's super important and it's hard.
Well, and I really liked so I'll have like random thoughts or like I'll I'll have like a clip or something of a company we need to reach out to for because we're in marketing for recruiting right now. So if I see an ad for something that we need to jump on, I'll take a snippet or the link or whatever, and I'll
Mhm.
send it. And I'll say if it's after hours, I'm like, hey, I don't want this action right now. I just don't want to forget to send this to you tomorrow. Can you follow up on this? And then I love because like sometimes you don't really know. Like I'm not a parent, but I always say like being a leader is like being a parent. You're just not really sure if you're doing it right. There's a million books with a bunch of different opinions, and everybody's going to tell you you're doing it wrong. But at the end of the day, if you kept them alive, you're probably doing okay. Um, so, um, but somebody had told me that a boss had emailed like instructions or like something at an odd hour. And in the email, he said, I realize that I'm sending this at a time that is convenient for me and it may not be convenient for you. Please action this tomorrow or by this date. And the person that received it really appreciated that that person respected and honored their personal time and realized that what was convenient for him might not be convenient for them. And it was just one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, that is what we're supposed to be doing because I got to see both sides of that interaction where like I don't know if I'm still bothering my guys, which I may still be, but I hope that they know that they can tell me if something bothers them.
Yeah. And let's weave that back in. We're getting ready to close in on the last question or two, but in the flip side of endurance, and when we take this mindset of suffering, if you recall back to the beginning when we sort of officially defined it per, Merriam-Webster's dictionary, and to endure or something that has endurance is a permanence or duration. So if we're talking relationally, if you want relationships to actually endure, and I'm not talking like, oh, they're suffering in their misery. I mean, like just to endure, like to stand the test of time. Thoughtful encounters like that, I think, is what puts deposits in the bank to where you're still going to have money at the end of the day that you can cash in on. You have to be thoughtful in those realms of like what you did or the other leader that you were talking about. Hey, I appreciate this might be not a good time. I'm only sending it so that we both don't forget about it, but please do not action it. And you also, that can't be a scapegoat and be like, but I really hope they action it. Like people can sniff that out immediately. If you're that type of person, you
Yeah.
know who you are. Just maybe don't send the email and make a better calendar filing system for yourself and remind them when it's convenient for them. But if you have a good trust relationship, you can do that. Hey, don't action it. And I do that with my general all the time. He'll send me stuff sometimes on the weekend, like, hey, Josh, boom. And it'll be like on our unclassified email system. And maybe I have the computer at home. And if he says, hey, don't worry about it, I don't. And I don't feel like he's going to be coming down with this, hammer of Thor on me. Like, why didn't you respond on a Saturday at midnight when I was up doing things, right? Like he doesn't care. He's honest. He's a man of integrity. If I said, don't worry about it, that's what I meant. Save it for Monday. And I do. I'll save it for Monday. Um, so I think those relationships, they endure, they get deeper, they get more rich when you can honor and respect each other mutually like that, especially in a work capacity and especially for Marines. I think there's a good tidbit you can pull away from that one for sure.
Yeah. I think that goes back to that whole I don't mind suffering if it's for a reason. So if I know that you aren't just loving to waste my time and it's something that needs to be done, then I'm not going to complain.
Not as much. Exactly.
Marines are still going to complain. It doesn't matter. I mean, you could give them like a free ice cream day and they're still going to complain that it's not the right colored sprinkles. So,
Yeah. Speaking of free ice cream day, um, so 17th of May in Norway, it's like their Constitution Day, so it's called Setting Mai. And my little girls, first of all, they're excited because I told them I was like, Dad's friend that I'm going to do the podcast with tonight. She wants to come out and visit us in Norway. So I told them they're like, oh, she has horses and doggies. So they just think you're the coolest. And our neighbors, by the way, so Maudie, they don't have horses there anymore, but she grew up riding and training horses, and they have a German Shepherd, so it's sort of made for you. There you go.
that's
But
perfect.
I was telling the girls, I said, yeah, so Bree wants to come out here, and they're like, Dad, Aria told me this. Dad, can you tell her that if she ever comes out for Setting Mai, that the best thing about this day for us is we get to eat as many hot dogs and as much ice cream as we want, and we don't have to pay for any of it. So speaking of free ice cream, that's what my daughters love about Norwegian Constitution Day. All the
I
hot
need
dogs and
to
ice cream. I know. You get horses, you get German shepherds, you get great people, good weather. It's beautiful Norway, and all the hot dogs and ice cream you want. There you have it. So come on out. All right. So as we land this plane, if you were to walk away from this discussion and go like, I wish Josh or someone would have asked me this, or this is something that's just really, I want to just get off my chest and respond in this way with this topic of endurance, or just cuffs are off, anything you want to talk about. What is something you really want to leave with people and impart onto them?
I don't know how this would be framed as a question, but this is something that's been on my heart a lot. Is because we talk about endurance and we go through things that aren't the happiest days of our lives, right? And so I just keep coming back in my conversations or in other things that I've looked at and reminding people that your identity is not shored up in the things that happen to you. Your identity comes from what you do and how you choose to respond because you don't have control over if you're a victim or if a tragedy happens. You don't have control that a car accident ruins your body. You don't have control that you had abusive parents or you were molested or any like terrible thing that happens to you isn't your identity. And I think that oftentimes we wrap ourselves up in like, I'm a survivor of suicide or I'm a domestic violence survivor or and that's not who you are. Who you are is the person who grows from that, who comes out of that on the other side, who chooses to be a loving, soft, kind person on the other side, or who decides to stick up for themselves and have that strong personality that some people don't appreciate. And that's who you are. And that's what you take into the next thing that you go into after you've overcome the thing that has happened to you. And I just see a lot of people who their identity is so wrapped around this thing, this one defining moment. And I don't ever want someone to look at me with pity and say, oh, she's a widow. I want people to look at me and be like, wow, that's a very loving person who just cares about people and loves animals. And so I just feel like there's a lot of people who walk around with an identity tag that's not theirs to carry.
Right.
And I think that's part of that ties into the endurance of just like you're surviving a thing, but that's not who you are.
Man, that's beautiful. That's such a good thought to leave with people is, I say that, well, my wife and I say that a lot for our girls is the spoken identity that we share with them in moments where even maybe they make mistakes or they're going through something difficult can set such a different tone and trajectory for them through that immediate thing and then the duration of who they are as they grow and become who they were made to be. So you can look at something and look at yourself and really wallow in it. But I love that point of just knowing your identity and also I'd say with others around you that you care about, the identity that you speak into their lives, who you maybe when it's hard for them to see who they really are and you know them and you know the heart of them, calling that out like, yeah, Brie, I know it's rough, but man, you're such a loving person and you have so much grit and you're so gracious and you can highlight those good qualities and good identifying characteristics in other people. There's so much power in that. And I think it does help people endure and it does give them some strength and some stamina and a little gust of wind in their sails when it feels like they're just in the doldrums, man, and they aren't going anywhere. Quick, fast, and in a hurry, they're going nowhere. And it's, I think relationships and encouragement play such a pivotal role in helping people feel like they can sustain maybe one more step, one more breath. Sometimes that's all you got the strength for. But man, and I genuinely mean this. I said this earlier, but you have been that person to me. I know to each other, we've been that throughout different phases. It comes and it goes, it ebbs and it flows because that's life. But I know that not just because you're a yes person that just can't say no to people, but also because it's your heart is to care about people and to really pour yourself into others. If I needed anything, or even if Laura needed anything, either one of us could hit you up. And like that, you would respond and do whatever you could. And that's just, that is your heart. And I really cherish that about you. You're a fantastic friend, a phenomenal Marine that went to Paris Island, not San Diego, whoever you are. Still annoyed at whoever you are, by the way, but let's just let's just let bygones be bygones. But
Hey, we can't all
um
be
we can't all be right. That's a fact. And we are right about that. So there you go. But before I close this out, over to you for any last words or any
no.
last thoughts.
I appreciate you making space and inviting me on here. Everything happens for a reason. So I've had this like tug on my heart to just get out there and start, I guess, sharing. things with people because I do feel like I have a message for someone.
Mm.
Uh, and so you asked me the same week that was your Moss asked me to speak for them on Friday, and I was like, "Okay, God, I hear you loud and clear. Like, why can't you speak this loud down?" So,
Yeah.
I just thank you so much for this opportunity. This is the first podcast I've ever been on. So
Well,
you
it was
are
an honor to be your first host. You
thank you.
crushed it.
You're opening this door for me to go out and I don't know. I just want to change the world. I haven't quite figured out how I'm supposed to do that, but I know there's a reason I'm still alive because there's a lot of times I probably shouldn't have been. So I just
Yeah.
keep asking God to tell me why I'm here and what my purpose is, and He keeps pushing me down these things. So
Yep. He
maybe
knows
the
what he's doing way better than we do.
oh yeah, thank God, because
Truly. Well, I will say this. I know sometimes it's hard. It's hard for people to see maybe the fruit of like what they've been trying to sow, and then it takes a while for them to reap, or maybe they'll never see it, and that can be difficult. And that patience in those seasons where there's maybe not so much. But I will say your voice matters, your story matters, who you are actually matters, and there are a lot of people that this impacts. Not that there's this huge growing followers of what this podcast is, but I think the most important ones, and I always
yeah,
end it this way, but this is for primarily for my little girls. Like that is always my target audience. And I know you know that because we've talked about it, but to, well, Laura, of course, my wife, but to Aria and Alessia and Karina, I love you girls. And these conversations in this virtue development model and everything we're doing, getting good friends and people I love and respect together to just chop these things up and get real with it. It's for you because one day, and sometimes it's that day is now because they listen to some of these. So your impact is actually immediate, and it doesn't always have to take forever to see the fruit that you can reap from it. And it's really impactful for them. And it means a lot to me that you would come in and share this space with me, knowing that that is, if it didn't reach anyone else aside from my three daughters, I actually wouldn't care because that is everything to me. That is what matters. That is that sacred part of my life. And the fact that you have such a beautiful way to share your story for them to hear and to maybe encourage them to endure when things get rough because they're young and life will hit them in the teeth plenty of times. I promise you girls that. But if you can learn from people like your mom, maybe your dad once in a while, maybe, I don't know, definitely from people like Bree. It's such a cool opportunity, and I'm just honored that you would do this with me. So thank you for coming. You crushed it. I'm so proud of you. I can't wait to hear what happens with your journey. Is there a way that people can stay connected on any social media platforms to see what you're doing as you continue to grow this thing?
yes. So because I work for recruiting, I opened up my Instagram, which was really weird for me to be vulnerable, but it is bs.kess, and I just have to say everybody thinks it's my initials, and it's not. When I've always tried to be witty. So when I got married and we created our first joint email account, I thought BS Kess sounded, I guess, cool and it flowed well. Steve didn't like that I put my initial in front of his, so it just became my junk email address. And after he passed away, I used it for like when you like sign up for stuff or whatever, like you don't want them really emailing you, I would give them BS Kess. And, my gunny goes, "Yeah, that makes sense. You are full of BS." And so it just
I
kind
knew
of
it was
became
going
my
there.
identity. It just shifted from Bree and Steve to BS Cass because I'm always BSing.
And it
So,
stuck.
yeah,
And there you go. Well,
but
thank you so
thank
much
you
for
so
coming.
much.
I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. You always have a friend in us. And buckle up for the ride because life is going to hit us in the teeth. Endurance isn't comfortable, but you don't have to do it alone. And we're always here with you. So have a great weekend. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Off the Hinges. Don't forget to follow Foundational Coaching on your favorite social media platforms. Kick off your Saturday with me tomorrow morning at Coffee and Reflections on Substack, where I'll share my reflections and stories on the weekly virtue. I'm honored to be a part of your story today, and I'm proud of your growth, my friend. I can't wait for our next time together, exploring the vault.